This amazing man.
Ian. Look at all these people who've showed up just for you. So Ian leads a team called R.AGE in Malaysia. It sits in the Star Media Group, which is really quite interesting because you don't often come across a scrappy, impact-focused journalism team that sits in a big organization like that. But also, what is most interesting to me, at least, is the fact that you manage to walk that fine line of journalism, and quite often you step over to the other side of activism, which I actually think is much needed today in journalism. I know a lot of people will not agree with that view, but but there you go, Ian. This is your time.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi everyone. I'm gonna start screen sharing first. So I don't have a tech host today, so I'm doing everything myself, and something is bound to go wrong. So just forgive me in advance. I'm apologizing in advance.
Don't worry about it. We're here to help.
Awesome. All right. So first of all, it's a real pleasure and honor to be on Splice Beta. I've always wanted to do it. So yeah, here I am. So R.AGE, as was mentioned earlier, if we want to describe what we're doing, we call it investigative and impact journalism. Some people think the impact side of it is not really great. We shouldn't be doing it, but we fully embraced it and made it part of our identity. And we're just going to walk you through what that really means to us. All right. And if at any point, because I'm sharing my screen now, I can't really see any of your faces. So if any point anybody is just like really confused and not following me at all, and I'm not making any sense, feel free to just stop me and just yell and say, Ian, shut up, you're not making any sense, slow down or whatever. All right.
Don't worry about it, buddy. We're here. We can see you.
Okay. And it's actually great that I can't see any of you, so I'm much less self-conscious, and I can just power through with this. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. No problem. Okay, so I want to start with this story. In June 2018, in Malaysia, the UNHCR announced that this large group of refugees in Malaysia called the Qin Refugees from Myanmar, they announced that these people no longer require refugee protection. What that means was within about a year and a half, all of them would have to be repatriated to Myanmar. So we're looking at about 30 to 50,000 refugees that would have to be sent back to Myanmar. The other option would be they have to get relocated to a third country, resettled to a third country, or try to get Malaysian citizenship, which is obviously impossible because of Malaysia's very unfortunate refugee laws, or the lack thereof. So we thought that this whole policy shift seemed pretty strange and out of nowhere. Didn't seem like a good idea, so we started investigating. We found that the Qin community was in panic. UNHCR cards were already being revoked. And for many of them, that card is actually the difference between life and death. And I'll give you an example. This adorable girl here, Esther, she was born with a severe birth defect. So her family obviously are Qin refugees. So Esther's father had his UNHCR card revoked, which means he could no longer afford to work. He could no longer afford to also bring her for medical treatment in government hospitals. So he could only go to a private hospital. Even I wouldn't be able to afford it. So for that refugee family, it was literally something that if she didn't get that treatment, she would die. So we immediately recognized that this was a situation that was very, very severe. And our journalists, you can see on the right there, our senior producer, Elroy, he and one of our journalists, Samantha, went to the ground and started recording cases, trying to see what was going on. And we immediately found about 50 cases of Qin refugees already having their UNHCR cards revoked, like a year before it was supposed to end. And because of that, the entire community was just in a really, really bad state. Depression and suicide ideation rates were soaring. And inevitably, a refugee took his life. He jumped off a building. And yeah, I'm so sorry. It turns out there's some construction happening right now, which is really, really bad timing because I've been here like half of the day and nothing happened. So sorry about that.
It's all good. We can still hear you.
Okay, great. So a few months later, after that investigation, we launched a project called Refugees No More. And this is what it looks like.
They started rejecting last year now until is about 6,000 are already rejected.
In our assessment, the situation in Qin State is quite different. The conditions that would normally produce refugees no longer exist.
Qin refugees are the second largest refugee community in Malaysia. But since late 2017, they've been told that they are no longer refugees, and they are not happy.
So that's 6,000 refugees who had their cards rescinded by that point, which means 6,000 families. So you can imagine the scale of the humanitarian crisis, right? Which is essentially what we saw it as. And we did also, aside from the video documentary, what you saw was a trailer. There's a full documentary that hopefully we can leave in the chat for you later. We also did this multimedia feature story to try to get more people to be much more invested in it, to try to visualize what was going on for them, just to make the story a bit more real, especially for those that don't want to watch a 10-minute documentary. You know, the story would, hopefully reach a wider audience. Thankfully, the story that we released and the documentary created national awareness. The Foreign Affairs Minister actually responded and said, don't worry, we're not in the business of sending people back home if that's not what they want. But he definitely stopped short of saying that we will keep them here and protect them. UNHCR responded as well, not too kindly, but they responded and said, you know what, this is based on our assessments. We feel that Qin State is safe, even though there were news reports otherwise. And more importantly, hundreds of thousands of Malaysians heard about Qin refugees, and actually a lot of Malaysians didn't even realize that this community existed in Malaysia. But we didn't stop there. We went on to do to launch this project called the Chin Up Project. Get it? For those of you who like puns, the Chin Up Project. Okay. So we worked with a whole bunch of refugee rights groups, which is kind of like how we operate normally. We will work with a whole bunch of stakeholders. And we filmed about 50 video portraits, and it came with email petitions. And the great thing about this project was we were able to find a Qin refugee who got a film scholarship in Malaysia, so he was able to produce it for us. So we could have produced it, but we thought it would be really great if someone from the community did it. And the results were just absolutely gorgeous, and this is it.
Actually, yeah, I have a dream to become a billionaire.
I want to become a professional piano player.
I want her to be at the top music music composer. Feel very sorrow. We have so much things to do, especially for our educations. And we also want to have a good future.
So what we did was, if you guys noticed that 2020, right, they're saying where do they see yourselves in 2020? So if the policy were to be the same, now would have been the time when they would all have had to be repatriated, or essentially become illegal immigrants in the eyes of Malaysian law, which means that they would be detained, they would be open to exploitation. Our detention centers in Malaysia don't really have a great reputation. And then ultimately they'd be sent back to Myanmar anyway. So what we did was, if you guys go check out the Multimedia website we did for this, after you watch a video, there's a call to action button that comes out, and that allows you to generate an email petition to UNHCR as well as the ministers that were involved, the Foreign Affairs Minister as well as the Home Minister in Malaysia. So within 2 weeks, we managed to spam them with about 3,000 emails. So I bet they really, really love us over at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But yeah, 3,000 emails to them. Petitions. And thankfully, in a few months, the UNHCR decided to reverse the decision, and they allowed the Qin refugees to retain their refugee status indefinitely. UNHCR stopped short of saying that the campaign, the Chin Up project, was the one that caused them to change their decision. But they just said that they noted specific concerns raised by the Chin community and civil society. So there you have it. And I think the best part of this project, the most memorable part for me, was being able to make that phone call to the refugee community and tell them that we did it, this thing that we've been working on for the past few months, we did it. You guys get to stay, you guys get to keep your UNHCR cards, and everything will be okay. So that's kind of why we're so passionate about not just investigative journalism, but the impact aspect as well. It brings a lot of hope to people, and it also creates this much more participatory journalism, with the audience, and that's what younger audience really crave as well. So how did we build a scrappy investigative team in a big media company? As the topic given by Splice, which is going to be what I'm going to talk about. We're going to bring it all the way back to 2005 when R.AGE was first launched. I actually started as a lifestyle pullout. As you can see, very teeny bopper. If you think that, oh, wow, that looks so dated, it's like from 2005. Actually, in 2005, that was already dated. Okay, it was already like not really young. It was not really hip. I don't think it ever really was. So after many, many years of mediocrity and just not really enjoying what we did, we tried our best. I think my editors at the time, they were two really, really good journalists. Even though the direction from the company was try to reach out to young people, try to be more fun, try to just build huge audiences, do whatever it takes. The editors I had really started to push us to do serious journalism. So in 2014, when I took over R.AGE, I decided let's just go all out for the serious stuff. Let's just go engage young people with really, really serious journalism, empower them to take action on important issues, and to also stop doing it in a print pullout, because that just doesn't make sense to young people anymore. And we do it on web documentaries. So at this point, R.AGE was not in a really good place. There was talk that it was going to be shut down because we just couldn't compete with all these other brand new like news aggregator sites. So what our thinking was, we just go straight to like really, really high quality journalism, really, really strong web documentaries on the big issues. So after I sent that proposal, nothing happened for the longest time. For about a year and a half, nobody in the company thought that was a good idea. They didn't think that young people would be interested in serious journalism or social causes or documentaries. They just told us, Ian, this lifestyle stuff, maybe you're just not doing it right. Maybe you just need to be more clickbaity. You just need to be more, whatever it is. But they just didn't think this would work. But by mid-2015, I think my persistence finally paid off. I sent them a bunch of proposals, one after another. And finally, they probably got tired of me and said, OK, we're going to strike you a deal. If you can get advertisers for video content, for like commercial video content, we would be allowed to use part of that revenue to start work on investigative projects. So we're talking like 20%, 15, 20%. So every big advertiser we brought on board, they give us a bit of money to start investigating. So one of our biggest sponsors at the start was Canon. They didn't have any money, but they gave us a whole bunch of cameras, which is really kind of them. And I still remember because back then we had so little support that Canon kind of like asked us, so okay, we're going to sponsor you all these cameras. We think your direction is going to work, but we can't sponsor you like microphones or any other accessories. And we were like, yeah, so okay, we have all these cameras, but we don't even have an SD card. And the guy at Canon was like, oh, that's so sad. So when he delivered all the stuff to us, he actually included a 8 gig SD card and with a nice note, go for it. And of course, for those of you who do video production, you know that 8 gig doesn't really get you very far, but that was our first memory card. And until today, I have that. So at the R.AGE office, we have this windowsill where we keep all our trophies and all awards. And there's a spotlight on that SD card right there, just to kind of remind us where we came from. So yeah, it was not a great time, but finally we managed to pull through. We managed to get enough funding and support to launch our first documentary. It was called The Curse of Sarawan. We found that there were an inordinate amount of child deaths in an indigenous village deep in the Malaysian rainforest. And this is the trailer for that piece.
Dekat sini ada tahun lepas ni. Dua.
Semua tepat. Oh, dua apa empat dah itu. Empat apa, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 juga kat tempat tu. Cucu saya situ meninggal satu. Ini ada.
Ini dua. Anak satu. Ramai enggak? Faham tak? Meninggal yang kanan juga dalam Sarawak ni. Sungai Kejap. Turns out somebody has passed today. A child. I'm gonna go check it out. This is the site of the grave of young Malini passed away yesterday morning, 6 in the morning.
So as you can see, very retro, even though this was just 5 years ago, but this was our first documentary. Already, immediately, we realized that we were onto something. It was a huge risk. Again, nobody thought it would work, but it made national headlines, and the government was actually forced to respond. Because the full documentary, we presented everyone, we just confronted everyone with that site, with the site of the burial ground of that young girl. And we went to the government to give them the right to respond, and they were like, no, we have no record of this death. And that just laid bare the issues with indigenous rights in Malaysia. Like, a child died of a disease that could have been prevented, and the government had no idea. Local government had no idea. So, but even though that was a bit of a hit, a lot of people are still unconvinced. They thought, okay, you did one good documentary. So R.AGE, we had to keep innovating, we had to keep delivering, and I think that's kind of the name of the game right now, right? So at that time, we were investigating another project called Predator My Phone, right about the same time. We spent 6 months undercover, exposing child sexual predators online. We also spent time advocating for the rights of survivors of sexual abuse in Malaysia, and lobbying for legislative reform. I know I'm going to show a lot of videos, but this one is just going to be a snippet.
Tonight we're meeting with this profile. He's 39 years old. He says he's a motivational speaker. Within a week of chatting with him, he wants to meet me. He went ahead and booked a hotel room. He said that all he wants is to talk and hang out in a hotel room. So when he finally appeared, I at first didn't know it was him because he looked a little different from the picture that he sent. But then he bumped into a group of friends. At that point, I thought he was going to just up and leave. But then he gestured with his hand and said, "Aku makan dengan anak aku." He just kept on walking, came and sat with me, and acted like I really was his daughter, like everything was normal. Tapi orang tak ada minat cerita pun.
So just for context, our journalist there was pretending to be a 15-year-old girl. This guy contacted her, and that's how that story got started. We found literally dozens and dozens of men, predators like him, across different states. Everywhere we tried it, everywhere we enabled these location services on our phones, we found this. So it was quite a phenomenon, a very sad and disturbing phenomenon. And then after that, this is the start of how we started to get even further into impact journalism. So when we were doing the first one about indigenous rights, we never really thought about having that campaign element, right? So we had to make sure that we had that progression. And as you can see, actually, I don't know if you noticed that the difference between the first video, the one in the rainforest, and the one on sexual predators, there's always a lot of innovation in every single video, that every single project that we do. So for example, that first video, we didn't even have subtitles. We only had translated text for the phrases that were in Malay. So small things like that, I think that helps always just to take your game to the next level. So small things that in terms of production, but also in terms of our campaigning. So after this, we realized that there were actually no laws in Malaysia against sexual grooming. So the guy that we did the sting operation on, we passed all that footage, all the evidence to the police, and they couldn't actually arrest him because there were no laws against sexual grooming. And that's when we launched this campaign.
Rolling.
These are famous Malaysians, by the way.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hey everyone, hi.
By now you've probably already seen this.
Biologically speaking, the human body needs to be doing it at the age of 14, I believe.
Muda macam awam.
It's called sexual grooming.
Sexual grooming.
Sexual grooming?
Sexual grooming.
And it's completely legal.
Completely legal.
Here in Malaysia.
And that is messed up.
That's messed up.
That's messed up. It's just crazy. Does that disturb you?
Seriously?
Why isn't there laws against this yet?
It's time for you to make a change.
We want to put Malaysian laws back in the hands of its people.
And that's you.
And that's you.
You
means you.
So join us on October 14th.
October 14th. 14th of October.
October 14th.
Live right here.
Live on this Facebook page to find out how we are planning to change Malaysian laws against
Child sexual grooming.
Sexual grooming is wrong.
Sexual grooming is wrong.
It's wrong. It's so wrong. Please.
Let's make it illegal.
Make sexual grooming illegal.
Let's make it illegal.
So this had a clear call to action with the indigenous rights piece. We didn't actually have it. It happened organically. After that, some NGOs came in and decided to help. The government also deployed a few mobile clinics to try to sort the situation out. But in this case, we actually already had a plan, an advocacy plan, an impact plan. And that link would bring them to this website called MPs Against Predators, where there was an interactive map. Back then, we were like, ooh, we have an interactive map. It's so cool. Now, if I see another interactive map, I will actually throw up. But back then, we thought it was a pretty neat idea, where you could actually find out who your member of parliament was, and you can send them a petition again. So it would automatically generate a message to them on Twitter or on Facebook to tell them, and it would give a link to the law that we were trying to change. So we actually did research on the law, and we drafted our version of the law so that the politicians would know immediately what they were voting for. And thankfully, also in less than a year, laws against child sexual crimes were passed. Sweeping reforms to the law were passed, and the act actually covers a whole lot of other forms of sexual exploitation that we did not even include at first. Of course, again, even with this one, it was a huge win for us. You know, we were actually in Parliament. We were actually invited to do a press conference where both the government and opposition parties came together, which in Malaysia never happens. So they actually did a joint press conference with MPs from both sides. So it was a pretty big deal, and it was passed. But yeah, some people still weren't convinced, especially because of this impact angle. So people thought that we should have just told the story and just let civil society do their thing. But there was some measure of vindication for us. We did get our first Peabody Award nomination, which is the first in Malaysia. 2017, we started going global. We did an investigation into human trafficking syndicates operating through Malaysian colleges. Again, we have to always take our game to another level. I think it's we're running a bit out of time, so I won't show that video. Again, the government responded. The trafficking colleges licenses were revoked. But I still remember the thing about this project that really stood out for me and why I wanted to show it was this is when we really had to take one step up, because we were all young journalists. We were all in our 20s. We had only done like 3 or 4 investigations up to this point. But this was big money. There were people involved, millions and millions of ringgit, involves tens of thousands of victims. And we were heard that a lot of enforcement officers were actually in on it. So it was actually something that was a bit scary for us, but we committed to it. We found ways to mitigate risk. We found authorities that we could trust. And finally, when it came out, the government actually responded. And most of the colleges that were complicit in this form of trafficking had the license revoked. And both the police, immigration, and the Home Ministry all promised to take action. So that was great. Skip this. Yeah, so the project worked as well. Trafficking routes in Bangladesh, between Malaysia and Bangladesh were shut. And this brought us our second Peabody Award nomination. So stuff. Okay, so today, just to highlight, so that's just kind of the early history of how R.AGE came about, how we built this team that does investigative impact journalism. in a company that's pretty traditional. You know, Star Media Group has been around for about 50 years, and it's still very much based on the print paper. So for us to be able to do that, you know, there was that slow progression. We had to keep proving ourselves at every step of the way that this is what the new generation wants, and we can actually deliver. So today we continue on that journey. In fact, I really want to highlight this project because it was in collaboration with the Environmental Reporting Collective, which is this great collective of journalists across the world who investigate environmental issues, especially environmental crimes on a broad scale. So the interesting thing about them is that they don't just get everybody together, report, and then they keep the content. The content is highly, they make sure that they repackage it and repurpose it for every different market. Everybody gets to use the stories in their home organizations. So for example, for me, from Star, from R.AGE, we did investigations on the Malaysian portion of the trafficking route. And we were allowed to keep all that content. We were allowed to publish it in the Star on the front page, which was, you know, a huge win for us. But at the same time, we also contributed to this piece you see here called the Pangolin Reports, which is the ERC's like global story with everybody's narrative combined into one sprawling, you know, epic story. But on the Malaysian side, we were very fortunate because of the ERC. We were able to expose quite a lot of Malaysian police officers that were involved in this pangolin smuggling trade. In fact, it led to a corruption probe by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission. So that was pretty big for us. And even the chief of police in Malaysia said that he was going to investigate the officers that were involved. So we also went undercover for this project. So this is one of our producers receiving a pangolin from a middleman, a smuggler, and it's actually pretty smart. They use public buses, the public bus system. So you just pay a public bus driver 20 ringgit, and you know, just tell him, just deliver this. Someone's gonna meet you at the bus stop to collect it. So yeah, so we actually got ourselves quite a few pangolins that way, with help and funding from the ERC. And based on that, you know, the ERC had their global story, which was published on the website, but we also got all the content that we had. We were able to put together this illustrated investigative storybook. Again, thinking of journalism that creates an impact, what we learned was that we needed a lot more education. A lot of the stakeholders were telling us that we need to start educating young people to understand these issues on wildlife smuggling and so on and so forth. So we kind of tried to marry this really dark, investigative, gritty type of content with something that's illustrated and much more accessible. And that's how we got this character, this cartoon character, a pangolin called Rainy, which was actually based on Rainy, an actual pangolin that we helped rescue and released into the wild. We saved 3 pangolins, Rainy, Randy, and Raymond. And I was able to at least hold Randy for a while, which was a lot of fun. We also did an international investigation between Malaysia and Hong Kong, 2 very important transit points in the regional drug trade. And I will show you, this will be my last video, I promise.
He's a person who can go to any extreme level. First way to approach people is he tells that it's documents. They don't even know that there's drugs in the bag. For now, maybe he doesn't know that we are doing this now, but I worry that once he comes to know, he can do something to my life as well.
This girl is a R.AGE reporter, undercover. So this was our latest piece, latest major release. So as mentioned, the model that we have is pretty simple. We start with investigative journalism, which we believe good journalism should identify both problems and solutions, right? You know, you don't want to write a story that's all just exposing issues and you never speak to the right stakeholders or the right experts to talk about what the solutions are. After that, we strategize an impact campaign by engaging the relevant stakeholders. And what we found is that journalists are often the only people connecting all these different stakeholders, because a lot of times civil society and government, law enforcement, grassroots people, they don't always get along. But the one people that they're all willing to speak to is the journalist. So what we do is we try to get feedback from all of them and come up with a unified strategy to bring everyone forward on that issue and just kind of move the needle a bit. And finally, we make sure that when we do create some type of real world change, we celebrate impact. We try to find a way to measure success and bring audiences along with us on that journey. We were very fortunate. The work has paid off. We've got quite a lot of awards. So why did it work? I'm just going to end with this really quickly. I think we were very, very lucky because that strategy that we have proposed to do impact journalism really resonates with the audiences, younger audiences today. Aside from the fact that they have huge spending power, much higher and higher spending power online especially. Most importantly is what you see on the bottom right quadrant right there. They are people that believe very strongly in social justice. They're keen to make the world a better place, and 73% of them will actually spend on companies that have sustainable practices. So that's actually helped us to, yeah, as you can see all these articles saying that, if you want to engage young people, you've got to work on social justice issues, social responsibility. And that's actually how we've also learned to start becoming sustainable financially, by working with big clients to deliver content that has a social impact angle. So the one you see on top is something that we did recently for Independence Day in Malaysia, Merdeka. It was commissioned by its sponsor. The one at the bottom is a huge campaign we've done nationwide, also with another sponsor who wanted an anti-bullying campaign. So we pitched them this huge impact campaign to do with kindness and empathy education. And that brings us to the present. I think we need to reclaim the phrase social justice warriors. People use it like a bad word these days, like it's a bad thing. But I think if all these young heroes can make an impact, there's really no excuse for us journalists to say, no, my job is just to report, that's it. So we really strongly believe that we have tools, we have the ability, we believe we have the objectivity to do it, without, affecting our storytelling, without affecting our journalistic principles. So why the hell not? And with that, that's it. Questions?
Why the hell not? I like how you.
Why the hell
ended
not?
that.
Indeed.
That's amazing, man.
Thank you.
What a great team! What a great set of work you've done.
Spectacular.
Hey, let's go to the questions, because I know there are a lot of questions out there. Hannah Teo from Taboola always has a whole bunch of questions. Hannah, why don't you jump in?
Hi, Ian.
Hi, Hannah.
Great presentation. I've seen some of this before and I still enjoyed it. So my question is, how do you pick topics that resonate with younger audiences, like the teenagers, the young adults, and what works for your content distribution strategy? And if I may help Jen to present her part of the question, is it the treatment or the way that you presented it that young people engage?
Right. The first one, picking topics, right? The way we do it is actually a bit annoying, in the sense that we're always saying, like, it's not about what they want to hear. We always remind ourselves it's what they need to hear, right? If it's done with the right tone, we think that it will resonate, because we always remind ourselves to go back to news values in picking a story, right? Traditional news values. That's the one thing that we feel has not changed. Formats have changed, treatments have changed, but news values have not. If a story has lots of news value, it's still going to work. You just got to make sure that it's delivered in the right tone on the right platforms. So like what you're saying to your second question about the treatment as well as the platforms and this distribution strategy, we've just learned to be very, very platform agnostic, and we've really had to learn to take our ego out of the equation. Because not too long ago, people were telling us that Twitter was just used to send pictures of your lunch. But we were the first to go on Twitter, and we got tens of thousands of followers at the start because we took it seriously. And we started engaging people who are our age. on important topics, and topics that thought young people were really interested, but just that nobody was talking about it on their platforms, you know what I mean? In a way that was accessible to them. So for example, with our documentaries, yes, there are times where we feel like we still need to do those long 15-minute documentaries where we bring in experts, where we, where we have lots of different points of views, and it can get a bit slow. It is a bit highbrow in that sense, but we also make sure we do lots of snippets for Instagram, for IG stories, for Facebook Watch that are much shorter, 4 to 5 minutes max, and we're doing a lot of 1-minute content as well, just to be able to make sure that those topics are very easily accessible to young people. If that makes sense, sorry.
Are you embracing TikTok as well?
We are trying to. I will have to say that one is painful, very painful. Yeah, but we are trying.
Just about. I was kind of waiting for you to talk about your upcoming Netflix deal.
Oh yes, I don't know if I didn't include this in my presentation, but so talking about new formats, we came to a point where we realized that content was going to go two extremes. One would be really, really micro content, 1-minute content. So my challenge to the team a few months ago was, you need to start thinking about 1-minute documentaries that will fit into a TikTok or into an IG post. So that's one thing. Tell the story, tell our usual 10-minute documentaries in 1 minute. It's possible, it's doable, so that's the challenge to them. The other one is for long-form content, for feature-length content. So we did do a feature-length documentary. We did have a premiere in a Malaysian cinema. It was going to go into Malaysian cinemas nationwide, and COVID happened. So our gala premiere, which was great, there were like 800 people showed up to watch the movie in a cinema. It happened like 5 days before lockdown in Malaysia. So yeah, you can watch it on cable TV in Malaysia, and soon in Singapore and Brunei. Yeah.
I don't know, if I was Netflix, I would be calling you every day right now. But we'll come to that later. I mean, I'm not even kidding. But Janie, you have a cool question. Jump in.
Hi Ian. Like Alan said, I'm a big fan of all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So I'm just curious with that negotiation process with the management. Because I know like selling an idea is always challenging. So just curious, how long or short before they agreed to let you do this? Any pro tips for anyone who wants to do the same?
It took us 2 years, almost 2 whole years. And I've learned that the real tip is, aside from just sheer stubbornness and persistence, which I think all journalists should have anyway, right? The other tip is really to try to hold the other person's perspective. I think one of our superpowers as journalists is empathy. That's the biggest tool, the biggest skill we have. That's something that we practice every single day, right? Putting ourselves in the shoes of the person's story that we're trying to tell, and trying to get rid of our biases and our prejudices. So that's something that I had to keep reminding myself to do with my management as well. So I was giving them these grand plans, and they're like, "No, this is too idealistic. It's not going to work out." So I could have easily said, these old people don't understand, and I just puff and puff, and But after a while, I realized it's so much more productive to try to hold their perspective, and I realized that they want really firm financial plans. It's not just about the concept. I'd have to learn as an editor not just to think about story potential. I'd also have to learn to think about the numbers, financial sustainability, and so on and so forth. So that process took about 2 years. And we just really got lucky. I think it really was, it came to a point where they were like, what are we going to do at R.AGE? It's not competing with all these new news aggregator sites that are coming up that can spend a lot of money on social media marketing because they don't have to pay journalists, right? So they just copy our stories, and then they'll just market it way better than us on social media. And it happens so many times. I remember there was one story we spent like 5 or 6 months undercover, and within 5 minutes of us publishing it, they copied and pasted the entire story. And they changed the first paragraph. They added a really clickbaity headline that was just so cringe, and they had way more views than us. They had way more shares than us because that's their game, right? I think it really just happened with a lot of luck as well. So I'm not sure if these tips that I'm giving or this advice I'm giving is really, really practical. But at the very least, I think, hold perspective of the people that you're trying to convince, just as we do with any other journalistic work.
Hey, Janisha, why don't you jump in with your question?
Hi, Ian. Really, really great presentation. So impressive. Wow.
Thank you.
This could just be my personal experience, but when you work with large sponsors or when you work with a huge corporation, they tend to come with their own baggage of being kind of scared to rock the boat. They don't want to upset, especially in countries where the government can be a bit erratic, to be quite polite. And have you ever had any pressure from your corporation saying, "Hey, man, don't do this, don't rock the boat, don't draw too much attention to us"? Like, it's not really censorship, it's kind of a preemptive censorship. Has that happened to you, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I think if you ask any publication in Malaysia, they'll tell you the same thing. Yes, right? In Malaysia, you kind of learn self-censor in a way, to self-regulate. Sorry, that's the better term, right? To self-regulate. So yeah, there has been the suggestions that maybe don't tell the story this way, maybe don't touch that, and every time it happens, we obviously kick up a fuss. That's when we do huff and puff, and and that's when we do struggle to take their perspective, and but honestly, we still do, and sometimes we do see why they kind of have to very hesitantly ask us these things and propose these things. But we're very lucky that we are also in a good position, being under Star Media Group, that we could actually sometimes say no to certain clients who asked us things that just were not in line with our values as journalists. And we could always say, we could always counter-propose. And we were lucky that the first 3 projects we did really blew up. So like Predator on My Phone, that really blew up. And we got many ministers involved. Everybody was like, "Oh, can we also work with you? We also want to have impact like that." So we could kind of dictate the terms very early on and just tell certain clients, "Thanks, but no thanks. It's not what we do." And most of them are pretty understanding. So I think one thing is this insistence on the right values, right? It comes back to my last slide, like social justice warriors. A lot of people say that, oh, if you do that, you're being overly idealistic. But actually, it's probably the most practical thing you can do, is to set the boundaries of who you are and what you can and cannot do. So we go to them and say, "Sorry, you know our work, right? You've seen Predator on My Phone. You've seen student trafficked. You've seen Refugees No More. Do you really think I'm going to do this investigation for you?" I mean, we always tell them anyway. We will never take money for an investigation. You can ask us. You can pay us to do a documentary, commission a documentary, commission a sponsored content, but never an investigation. So if you hold true to those values and make them very apparent in your work, and you be as transparent about it as possible, as authentic and transparent about it as possible on social media, in the long run, people won't even ask you these things. They won't even come to you with these type of asks.
I love that. When in doubt, go back to your principles, measure yourself against them, measure your work against them, and then start again. And speaking of taking taking money, I have a question.
Sure.
So I was curious whether the impact from your journalism ever, does it work to get funding? And when I say funding, I mean funding, sponsorship, advertising, commissions. What about reader revenue? I mean, I know I would subscribe. I know I would want to be a R.AGE member. If I got this content, if there was a way for me to, is reader revenue, would you ever ask your viewers for money?
Yes, we've been trying to for the longest time. We've been working on it. Hopefully it won't take 2 years as it did the last time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
So
we've been pushing for it. We've been really pushing for it, yeah.
Okay, so if I could just clarify one thing. Do you start on the projects when you've secured some kind of funding to support it? or do you just go ahead and do it, and hopefully along the way you get UNHCR or UNICEF or someone to come in and help?
With investigations, we always just go ahead. So again, we're actually very, very lucky that STAR has been funding a lot of this, a lot of these investigations. So I think we've earned that trust as well from them with our first few projects. When where we're still having that weird quid pro quo kind of thing. We're bringing a corporate sponsor, and we'll let you have your fun. So we proved that we are good. Like what's the word? We'll make it work. If you give us enough leeway, we'll come up with the goods. So I think the team has done a fantastic job with that. And I've lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
Which comes first? The funding,
right?
Right.
So with investigations, again, we never take money for it. That we purely operate on our editorial budget. And sometimes we'll have clients that come along and say that I want to do something for students, for example. I want to do something about bullying. So that's where the Kindness Week project came along, right? They came to us and said, I have some CSR funding. I'd like to do a project to help eliminate bullying in schools, and that's where we proposed an impact campaign based on kindness. Sometimes we go to clients that we know are kind of aligned. We have approached people and say, we have this great idea. So, for example, the movie that we had in cinemas for one week before lockdown, that movie was actually a story about the Malaysian blind football team. So we wanted to use their story, which is just incredible. It's just an insanely powerful story, to kind of turn it into an impact campaign about people with disabilities in Malaysia in general, and to use that to raise awareness for how sports is a great way to empower people with disabilities, right? So we had that story. We had already interviewed them to do a tiny online piece, and we heard that there was this big bank that was interested in sports programs for people with disabilities as well. So we approached that bank and said, would you like to fund this campaign? And thankfully they said yes. So it kind of works both ways.
Very good. If I could ask the final question here.
Sorry, before you do,
go for it.
I want to ask what Hannah's asking. Ian, you keep telling us about this movie. Where can we see this?
Is
it on YouTube somewhere?
No.
Can you pay to watch it?
Yeah, you can pay to watch it in Malaysia right now. It's on Astro. I think some people in Singapore and Brunei might have Astro. No.
Right. And I guess you don't have the right legal contracts for you to put this on YouTube, do you?
Yeah. So this was a huge learning curve for us, right? To take web documentaries to feature level, the level of documentation involved. All the rights, and there's terrestrial rights, there's pay TV rights, there's streaming rights, online TV on demand, and every one has a different contract. There's distribution deals, there's marketing deals. So yeah, it was a huge learning curve. So it's very, very complicated. In Malaysia, it's going to be on Astro Pay TV for I think at least another 1 or 2 months, and then after that, it will go to online streaming services. The one that we already have is Dim Sum. Thanks, Shirley. Dim Sum is a streaming service that is owned by the Star. So it will be available there once the pay TV window on Astro is over. Dim Sum is available in Singapore and Brunei, and I think after that there are other distribution deals that are in the pipeline for different territories. So there's a deal that's hopefully going to happen in the Middle East. Somebody's interested in buying and broadcasting it in the Middle East. And hopefully other places as well.
Very good.
Amazing.
Final question. If you had to give one advice to anyone who wants to build an impact journalism unit in their team, what would it be?
I think you'd have to really look within first, and really understand whether you're doing it for the right reason. Because once you commit to it, that's you have to really commit to it. You have to live and die by these values. And we reached so many points in our journey as R.AGE where we had to really be brutally honest with ourselves. Do we proceed with this investigation? Do we say to hell with the powers that be, we are going to do this? Do we say, yes, these people have millions of ringgit in the bank and we're going up against them. Are we willing to do that, right? So once you've committed to those values, you kind of have to live and die by them. And if you're not authentic about it, young people online will call you out on it. They will sense it. You know, they have lived in this digital world their entire lives, so they can see it, they can sense it. And they will call you out. So yeah, so it's something that you really have to internalize first, I think. I know it sounds all very airy-fairy, but it's really true. If you're not going to be, if you can't commit to it, like maybe don't even start. There's something for everybody out there. The media space is very broad. Not everyone has to do impact and investigative journalism, but if you do, I'd strongly advise you to start off on the right foot with the right principles and the right core values. And also, yes, why the hell not?
That's right. That's definitely a value. I mean, you know, thank you for Shirley for putting that back in there, because, you know, actually that's a value. You know, it's like one of those all said and done values. I've considered all of this, and my decision is still, why the hell not? It means I like that you're holding yourself answerable. You know, you're saying that young people are going to call you out on stuff. You know, your team, your devil and your angel are probably going to call you out on stuff.
Yes.
You know, and I think you referred to your stakeholders, and I like that you kind of walk that tightrope between, you know, what you want to do and what you should be doing based on a whole bunch of different decisions. You're holding yourself answerable. Ian, thank you so much for this. Please come back and tell us what you do in the future. Please be answerable to us. We want to see more from you. We'd love to see where you go next with this. Please let us know. This has been so inspiring for me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ian.